Yes.
8:30.
Woo.
It's way off.
Okay.
Time to change the battery.
Battery's bad.
Need a battery.
I'm going to call to order the Okeechobee Utility Authority Board of Director meeting for August 18th, 2022. It's 8:30 a.m. Would everybody please stand and join me for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The determination of voting members. Wait a second, my screen is so big, I can't even read it. Here we go. Miss Anderson, she's out. Mr. Clay, Mr. Fadley, Mr. Moldenhauer,
Here.
Mr. Nelson,
Present.
Ms. Trent,
Here.
Mr. Snyder. We do have a quorum. We have Harry voting for Glades County today, or participating for Glades County, and city representation and county representation. So we're good. Moving to agenda item number 2, we have several additions to the agenda at our place setting. Would any board member like to add or delete anything in addition to that? Okay, I'd entertain a motion to accept the added additions to the agenda.
So said.
Motion, Mr. Nelson,
Second.
second. Ms. Trent, excuse me. I did. Any further discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 2A, Connor Gable Project Closeout. John?
Mr. Chairman and board members, this is basically just a closeout of the project. We've already placed it into service many weeks ago. Actually have customers on it. It was one of these issues trying to get the contractor to provide us the last of the closeout documents so we can pay. So you'll see 2 items that are up for consideration in this agenda item. The first one would be that there was some contingency money built into the contract that was not used to a total of $25,000. We need to do what's essentially a deductive change order number 1 to remove that money, the contingency money, $25,000 from the contract.
John, before we go on, can we handle that first?
Stop there, that's your first item.
Yes, that's just a change order.
Stop, turn his mic off.
Why?
I just said, stop, turn your mic off. We're going to work on this one before we go to the next one.
Well, I was planning on.
Okay. I'm joking. All right, it's the board's pleasure.
Motion to approve the deduction of change order number 1,
Motion by,
amount of $25,000.
thank you, Steve. Motion by Mr. Nelson,
Second.
second, Ms. Trent. Further discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Now,
And then the next item up for consideration is their final pay request, which is in there, and the total is $116,472. So staff is recommending the approval to PRP Construction in that amount of $116,472.
it's the board's pleasure.
Motion to make a final payment to PRP Construction in the amount of $116,472.00.
Motion by Mr. Nelson,
Second.
second, Mr. Moldenhauer. Further discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
So with those 2 approvals, we'll get the appropriate people to execute. The next item, item 2B, is for repairs to the ozone generators. We have 2 of them at the surface water treatment plant. One is down right now. It needed some parts. I've already placed that order for parts to get it operational. But they are approximately 15 years old, and we need to go through and replace some burned out elements and clean the tubes and reset some equipment in there. And so we got a proposal from the supplier of the equipment, Wedeco, and it is attached, and it's for $92,555. It is certainly staff's recommendation that we approve this expense to get both units up and running and back to nearly as much of 100% capacity as those older units can be brought to.
Question, if I may, sir.
Yes.
Being that these units are about 15 years old, can we have them on a maintenance program that would maybe every 5 years or 7 years to check to see where they are at, rather than being hit at the very end for a high number?
The answer to that question is yes, we have an annual contract for, superficial testing, but what they're doing here is not included in any annual contract, because I forget the number, it's like 60 glass tubes or each one of these, they have to be pulled out, cleaned, and reset. It's very extensive.
It is.
So that's why we would wait till it reaches that element where we need to go in and have these things cleaned, and anything that's broken inside of there burned out and replaced.
Okay, thank you.
We do have in the budget an expense for replacing these units, but we're not talking 92,000. We're talking like $1.3 million. So it's pretty expensive to replace these units. So we figured the refurbishment would be a very good step, and maybe we can get several years at them as opposed to a couple.
So what's the average lifespan of these units?
If I don't know that for a fact, but I would guess somewhere around 20 years.
Okay, so as we approach that, then budget-wise, we have to fully replace.
It will have to be considered in there, yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
that's just, okay.
What I'm reading here, the refurbishment will include new electrodes, not cleaning, they're gonna put new electrodes in, and they have a 10-year warranty, so.
On the electrodes, but the cleaning of the glass tubes and stuff like that, there's a brochure in there that tells you about what they do. It's fairly extensive
So it's got a 10-year warranty on the work they're doing now on some of the parts.
on the parts,
On the
yes, sir.
parts, right.
So we know that if this states that units are close to 15 years old, I mean, we know that within a 5-year period, we need to, for budget purposes, make sure we've got that factored in.
It is in the budget for next year, but because we're doing this work here, we'll probably slide that out. It'll stay within, say, the 5-year window, but it would not necessarily be included in next year's budget to try to do this work. And if we did do the work, there might be other things that we have to do, but it's in there.
Okay.
Any further questions? It's the board's pleasure. Yes, sir.
John, what's the method of disposal of the electrodes? I know that we're supposed to dispose of them, looking at this briefly.
I don't know that answer. I did ask the water treatment plant supervisor that question, and I asked him to check that answer to see if that's the correct way to do it.
Is that a way you can just take them to
Well, the answer was they put them in a dumpster. But I need to, if these people are making that a specific issue, then we need to go back and check why they would make that such a specific issue, as opposed to, they could throw it in the.
how big the things are? How big are they?
I don't know that answer. And so I was kind of thinking that sometimes with contractors, they don't want to be tasked with bringing in a dumpster and having to pay disposal cost of anything on the job. And so maybe that's just their standard language they put in all the contracts, that the construction debris is the concern or the requirement of the owner.
But in any event, this work needs to take place. I mean,
Yes, sir. Well, I mean, we could get by with one until it breaks, and then we don't have anything. My strong recommendation to you is we don't do that. We get the both refurbished, back up and running, because it will impact finished water quality going out into the system. Because, just as a reminder, I probably put it in here, but the ozone is what we use to take out the taste, color, and odor of the lake water, which is pretty strong at times.
'cause it's not, I would hope it's not like a uranium rod or something like that. I mean, I have no idea.
Ozone
Ability.
is a very strong oxidizer, so it basically cooks it out. I will also tell you that you hear the topic about blue-green algae, and ozone is a very, very effective tool of taking those out of the water also.
It's a strong disinfectant too, but it just doesn't leave a residual. It's not like chlorine.
It's a very good product for what we use it for.
Under the scope of work here, it says that the electrode assemblies are glass core. So that might be it too. They got a lot of glass to deal with and they don't want to worry about breaking it.
Again, I don't know.
So
the
you
answer.
never know. Okay.
I will get that answer though before we get here.
Okay, what's the board's pleasure?
Motion to approve the amount of $92,555.05 for the ozone generator repair.
Motion by Mr. Nelson.
Second.
Second, Ms. Trent. Further discussion? Nothing? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Moving on to item 2C, Lakeview Estates wastewater treatment plant improvement. Again, the project is at what we call substantial completion, which means we could take beneficial use of the treatment plant, but there are cleanup items still left to be done by the contractor. We have not seen an invoice from this contractor since October of last year. They've been holding the invoices because work wasn't progressing in a timely fashion. Late last week, they submitted 4 invoices. It took a lot of back and forth between OUA and Lakeview to get the invoices correct. They have a new project manager. So, at any rate, that's why these two have come in later. The third one made the board package, and it's in the consent agenda. Item 2C is the septic tank abandonments. There were 7, I believe it was 7 houses on the north end of the project that needed to be connected into our system. That has happened. The abandonment we have the Department of Health permits for abandonment. The houses are connected. It is certainly staff's recommendation that we approve this invoice in the amount of $8,800.
I'll make a motion to approve this request in the amount of $8,800 to One Water.
Motion by Ms. Trent.
Second.
From Mr. Nelson. This is to One Water, not B&B, correct? Yep.
Well, it eventually will make it to B&B. They're the sub, but it's going to
They're
work.
the general on it, yes. Any further discussion? Being none, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Moving on to item 2D, and the second of 3 invoices you'll see this morning from One Water. This is for the treatment plant construction. The invoice is in the amount of $36,000. The contractor has done most of the work. We are working through some punch list items with them right now, so they are not 100% complete, but the plant is at substantial completion, which means beneficial use has been achieved. It is staff's recommendation that this invoice from One Water in the amount of $36,000 be approved.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Moldenhauer. Second by Mr. Nelson. Discussion? Further discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. That's all the additions. We're going to move into agenda item number 3, which is a public hearing for Resolution 22/03. Yes, Harry.
Did you get electronic copies of these editions, so I've got a record here, and don't have the same paper?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem, Harry. Public hearing, Resolution 2203, fiscal year 23, schedule of rate, fees, and charges. John, or,
So we have to have a motion to open the public.
oh, that's right, that's right. I'll entertain a motion to open public hearing.
Motion to open public hearing.
Mr. Nelson,
Second.
Ms. Trent, second, Ms. Trent. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, presentation.
Here we are with Resolution 2203, the schedule for rates, fees, and charges for FY '23. Just as a background, every year, well, when needed, we set the rates, fees, and schedules. Some years we carry over. But this year, because of the presentation for a rate increase for the coming year, we need to do this presentation. So you have with you in your board package, the proposed schedule of rates, fees, and charges. It is set up as 2%, as suggested in the preliminary FY '23 budget. And that's where this schedule is set up. It's open for discussion when we get to the comment period, whether to approve that 2% or approve something else. So at your, if it is the board's pleasure, I will be happy to read Resolution 22-03 by title only. If that is where.
Please, sir.
So you have in your board package Resolution 2203 and reading it by title only. A resolution of the Okeechobee Utility Authority, Okeechobee, Florida, adopting the schedule of rates, fees, and charges for fiscal year 22-23, providing for filing a copy with the authority clerk and providing an effective date.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any public comment? They're not beating the door down, so I guess none. Comments from the OUA board?
So I can at least go in with this with y'all. We did you have a comment?
I think we have comments, though.
I was just going to set the motion if you're done. The rates and fee schedule was set up at 2% as allocated or presented in the preliminary budget. That is certainly an open for discussion or comments as to whether we should stay at 2% or adjust it. So that's.
Is it time for me to discuss our meeting, our budget meeting, and the deficit that we're falling under because of the cost increases of chemicals and other things that we might, as a board, want to review an increase to something higher than 2% at this point in time? You know, Murray Hamilton, our analyst, gave us the number, I believe it was 7% we were behind because we hadn't done any rate increases over so many years. And we, as a board, had looked at like 2%, 2%, 1%, 2%, something like that, spread it out. Mr. Hamilton can probably give us more information, or John, on the deficit with the chemicals and things that we ran into. And it might be time now, since inflation's running crazy around the world, to go ahead and bump it a little bit more to give us some operating comfort, because right now that was unseen expenses. So I would consider, from our discussion that I had with Mr. Hamilton and Mr. Hayford one day when we were in here, considering 3 to 3.5% instead of 2 on the rate increase at this time, and we'll reevaluate it next year if things level off, and maybe we can give them a year off. But right now, we need to get some operating flexibility and some comfort.
Can you give us some highlights of the discussion that you had? Either one?
Yeah.
Can we go? No. Okay. So where we're at, and just to kind of reiterate what was said, we did plan the 2%, and it was based upon an expected inflationary index, not what we saw. As everybody knows, it's been at 8 and upper 8s and well above what was ever expected. And with that, we have gotten several notices for cost increases, either due to product costs going up, delivery charges. So what I asked staff to be able to do is I've signed a lot of purchase orders over the last 3 or 4 months where we had allocated, let's say, $100,000 for this chemical for the year, and they've already gone through that budget, and we're going to need even more money just to finish out our current fiscal year. Well, the problem with that is we use those values to set 23. And so if they've already gone up a considerable amount before we even get out of FY '22, it puts us pretty far behind on our expected expenses versus our revenue stream coming in. So the 2% that was pre-programmed that we were going to do, yes, it is certainly staff's recommendation that we go to something higher than that because we've already seen those expenses come up. And there's a couple of them here, and just a few of them are presented here as far as the chemical, fuel, and credit card charges that have all gone up. But we see it across the board. Our power, electricity, fuel charges, which we don't, that we have put in here, it's all over the place. And luckily, it's gone down some in the last couple weeks, but there's no concern as to where that's going to end up.
So you mentioned deficit. What type of deficit are we looking at as far as estimation and you averaging what you just spoke about?
Well, I mean, these charges right here are the ones that are above for the current year, which will carry over into the next year. So, that's close to $190,000 just in the few that we've listed here.
And so the proposed budget for '23, have we readjusted those numbers?
No, ma'am, what we were hoping to do, and that's why we're doing this month, is to establish what the rates, fees, and charges are gonna be next year, and then go in and adjust the preliminary '23 budget to meet these fees. The budget that you have in your possession is based upon a 2% increase,
Right.
but it does not have these additional fees built into it. So if you were to change the rate increase, and certainly before we get to next month where we're gonna present the final budget, we will take all that into account. Any new rates and any new charges that we've experienced over the summer.
That's why I'm asking, because I want to make sure we have enough time to review the revised figures.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it should be fairly quickly, within certainly less than 2 weeks of this meeting, we'll have this new final budget emailed out to you to start reviewing.
We would make a decision on the rates at this meeting. It would be, we would get the proposed budget in September and have till October to
Oh,
make the decision.
We'll get the proposed, the final budget out in the next few weeks. Then you have to decide on it at the September meeting,
Right.
and it will be implemented 1 October.
Okay, we don't approve it October, we approve it September.
September.
Yes, sir.
I'm a month off. Okay, sorry about that.
So that's going to give Larston enough time to get everything back out.
Yes, ma'am, because most of the work has already been done. And whatever we do with the, some of it, he's already implemented.
Okay.
I mean, the extra fees and charges, those aren't going away. So what we would end up doing is, it's going to be the dance between whatever the rate's going to, if the rate changes, implementing those new revenues, and then adjusting some of the money that we might have put into rate stabilization fund or the CIP. Those may have to change and go towards expenses.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're taking all this into account so that staff recommends the proper rate increase, so we know and completely understand what we're approving here, because at the end of the day, it's the consumer that's having to pay the price.
May I just add to confirm what you, I think you're asking? In the past, the rate increase or the approval of the rate along with the budget would normally be done at the September meeting. So in order for us to be able to react to any adjustment, we brought this forward, the rate adjustment, so that for the next board meeting, it will be pretty much an easy adjustment for us to present the final. So, yes. Also, in the interim, what we have done is we have set up a few scenarios in spreadsheet awaiting the board approval. So once the board approves the direction, we do have some scenarios that we can roll forward with.
Okay, so when will we see those scenarios?
Good.
Well, the scenarios are looking at, if you're at the rates, next sheet it has like, there is a 2%, a 3%, a 3.5%, and a 4%. We do have some amount of build up with those scenarios, in the background.
So to try
In
to
the
help-
back, that's background.
So to try to help that question, if you're talking about the final
Yes,
23 budget,
yes.
that easily can be delivered electronically within 2 weeks, probably less than that.
Less than.
Okay.
But it will be out. And then the standard answer, if it's advantageous for any board member to call us and meet with us to assist in going through it and seeing what the changes are, we'll certainly make that note. But we will probably be able to create, going back to school days, a cheat sheet of where we place the new what the revenue changes are and the expenses, a standalone sheet from your preliminary budget.
Because I do want to sit down with you and go over that, me personally, so, okay.
So it is certainly, you asked the last and final question. What is the recommendation of staff? And clearly, the 2% is not going to be an effective rate to meet these increased expenses. So that it does need to be up at close to or in that 3.5% range that would satisfy what we're projecting forward for next year to meet our expenses.
Okay, that's what I was
But-
asking.
There's one thing that we need to keep in mind, that we don't want to make the same mistake that we did a long time ago by keeping the rates low, and then after several years,
Yeah, because then it's a huge punch to the consumer.
it's a huge punch.
Yes,
But then again,
especially our businesses.
if you compare, and I did a study a couple of months back of all the entities around us that are the same as us,
Mhm.
our rates are well in line.
Mhm.
If you compare us against Palm Beach County, Dade, and Broward, our rates are very low as compared to, but unfortunately, and John knows this, and I've seen it in my business, chemicals are going through the ceiling, and they're not giving us any rhyme or reason. Everybody is raising their rates. That's something that we've got to consider with the respect, not only with regard to what the cost of chemicals and doing daily business, but are we going to be attracting more consumers or more people into Okeechobee County that are going to get onto the system over here? And that's where, again, we've got to visit with our friends in the county and the city. It's got to be mandatory hookup. No ifs, ands, or buts. Times come, you have your house, septic tank gets closed, you get on.
I have no questions.
Said no more questions, or you
No
had
questions
another
for me.
question? Okay. That all being said, for the sake of discussion and moving forward, I'd like to entertain that we consider 3.5% as a board, this time where they can start working the numbers for the budget and bring it back to us next month. But this is not, that's just a starting point to talk for conversation. We can certainly discuss
agree with
other
that.
options. So,
We need a motion.
yes.
Close.
We got to close first and then do that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll-
Motion to close.
Motion to close public hearing by Mr. Nelson.
Second.
Yes. Trent, second. Further discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing is closed. Okay, so we can entertain a motion to approve the resolution with the change. Resolution 2203, I'll entertain that motion.
Make a motion to entertain resolution 2203
-03.
and adjust the rate temporarily right now at 3.5%. Well,
Just adjusted.
just adjust it.
Adjust the rate,
Adjust
yeah.
it 3.5%.
Motion by Mr. Nelson.
Second.
Second, Ms. Trent. Discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Something to work on. Moving down the agenda to agenda item number 4, another public hearing. Public hearing resolution 22-04. This is reduction of the fiscal year 23 schedule of rates, fees, and charges. Entertain a motion to open public hearing.
Motion to open public hearing.
Mr. Nelson?
2204.
Mr. Nelson? Motion by Mr. Nelson.
Sorry, second. Oh,
Second.
Harry has, I think.
Harry? Mr. Moldenhauer? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Presentation, John.
So let me start with just reading the resolution, if you are so inclined.
Title only?
Well, thought I was gonna read it. Hoping to read it.
Would you like to borrow my computer, John?
No, sir, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the offer.
Okay.
Resolution 22. Resolution 22-04, a resolution of the Okeechobee Utility Authority, Okeechobee, Florida, adopting the schedule of discounted capital connection charges, discounted meter installation fees for fiscal year 23, providing for filing a copy with the authority clerk and providing an effective date. Mr. Chairman and board members, what we do every year for the last several years, there has been a resolution passed to reduce the water meter installation, water capital connection charges, wastewater capital connection charges, and wastewater connection, the physical service line connection. And in the past years, the last few years, it's been a 75% reduction. This resolution is following the path of previous ones, and that the reduction does occur. It is allowed to occur for the fiscal year without any further actions taken. This resolution will sunset September 30th of 2023, and the rates, fees, and schedules will return to the previous rate schedule. So this is what you have in front of you, a 22-04. It is set up that it's a 75% reduction in those fees mentioned. It can be anything you want. In other years, it was 50%, but we have seen to settle on the 75%. So we're bringing it to the board to see if you would like to continue in that path of the 75% reduction.
That was supposed to be an inducement for people to connect. I mean, that was the purpose of it. Was it effective? I don't know. At least it was a goodwill gesture to get people to hook up.
I think we've seen an increase over the last year, haven't we, of new connections?
There's been a change in connections, but we cannot, there's nothing to tell us that it's because of this reduction. It is a goodwill gesture. It probably
I think
does
we need to get back on
benefit,
the agenda here.
but we have nothing to prove that it does.
But if we're going to approach the city and county about mandatory connection and hookup, how is that? I guess I'm trying to understand, if we're gonna go that direction, why are we continuing to reduce these fees and charges as an incentive?
Well, it was set up because of the fact it's very expensive to hook up. And, yourself, the economy is not where it should be, but it's no different than the phone companies. They give you that incentive, we give you the phone for nothing, but we're gonna get you on the rates.
Right,
And
right.
everything else. So it gives the average person, I'm not gonna fight it, I'm gonna hook up and be done with it. That's it. Rather than saying, well, it's $25,000, you're gonna hook up, rather than we'll give you X amount of time and dollars decreased. Just makes it easy.
But we're not sure if these reductions have been working in that favor? We don't have a number or percentage?
There's no way to
or-
track it. There's no way to track it.
At least the prospective customer can't say we're an impediment.
Yeah, yeah.
And we'd rather get the customer online and pay.
So if I can supply a little bit of background.
I think we need to get back on here and open the public hearing to the comments of the public. We're already in the board comments, right? We've already skipped a couple of sections.
Sure, public hearing is open, right?
It's open.
We're up to where we got to go to public comments would be the next.
Okay, is there any public comment? Being none, now we can go comments from the board, get back in step. Now comfortable.
So we close?
So I can provide a little bit of background. One analogy that had been presented years past was that if you make the cost of installation lower, you will have a customer long-term. Whether that works or not, I don't know that. But the flip side of that is, under the capital connection charges, both water and wastewater, some people would call those impact fees, but I would share with you they're different than impact fees, because impact fees are to be collected and then pay for an improvement later, whether it's a new fire station, stormwater, school. So they collect impact fees and then have the capital expense. Ours are different. Our capital connection charges, we can't wait to build a treatment plant. We have to have the treatment plant first before we have the customers. So the difference being our capital connection charges are actually used to defer a capital expense, like a treatment plant, water, wastewater, fire hydrants, pump stations. So that's kind of the big difference. So when you start waiving the capital connection charge by 75%, you're effectively saying that to pay off that capital expense that we've already incurred will take longer, and we would have to gather that money from other sources. The answer to the question of mandatory connection, yes, ma'am, we're going through that right now. And the discussions are, how do the county and the city implement that mandatory connection policy?
Enforcement, right?
To enforce it, to enforce that mandatory connection.
Policy's in place.
So what I might suggest is, by not continuing the 75% reduction, it kind of goes against that measure to try to do the enforcement. For what it's worth, to help make your decision easier.
We are aggressively working in the southwest section. We've got the collection system getting started here in the next few months, hopefully. We're gonna be looking at putting that out to bid. We have the potential of many, many, many customers coming on it. We don't wanna put any impediments out there to keep them from hooking up. And this could be what they need to keep the monkey off the enforcement problem off of the county's back. If we don't wanna be the problem the reason they're not hooking up. So that's my thought.
Were I to have provided public comment, that would have been exactly right.
Thank you, Jay.
So therefore,
Motion to close public hearing.
motion to close public hearing.
Motion to close, second by Ms. Trent. Further discussion, none. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Now we actually get a motion.
The resolution is to continue the
Right.
75%, correct, John? I mean,
That
the
would be-
resolution
that's-
is,
That is what we had proposed, it can be anything, but the actual resolution is for a 75% reduction, let me just restate. It's for the water meter installation charges, water capital connection charge, wastewater capital connection charge, and the wastewater connection.
thank you for the explanation.
Motion is so moved.
Motion to accept resolution?
Yes, sir.
Motion by Mr. Nelson. Is that you, Harry?
Yes.
Motion second by Harry Moldenhauer. Further discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Does anybody need to take a break before we go on? With all this addition stuff? Okay. Squeeze down. Agenda item number 5 is another public hearing, Resolution 22-05, operation of the Okeechobee Utility Authority. Motion to open public hearing?
Motion to open.
Motion by Mr. Nelson.
Second.
Second, Ms. Trent. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. John?
So, resolution, we will need a break after I read this one.
Yeah.
Resolution 2205, Okeechobee Utility Authority, General Policies and Procedures. A resolution of the Okeechobee Utility Authority amending OUA Resolution 1105 establishing utility service rules, regulations set forth in certain findings, establishing intent, providing for definitions, authorities, authorizing certain actions by the executive director, providing for responsibility for payment of utility bills, establish billing procedures, establishing late penalty and delinquency interest, providing for the discontinuance of utility services for delinquency and payments and enforcement of liens, therefore, thereof, I think is what it's supposed to be, providing for applications of utility services, providing for penalties of falsifying information, providing for incorporation of rules into a utility agreement, establishing charges for return payments, providing for utility deposits as a prerequisite to service, requiring connection, providing for a change of location of service, providing for exclusive use of authorities' utility services, providing for disclaimer of OUA liability, granting access, easements, permits, privileges, providing penalties for damaging or tampering with OUA property, determining equivalent residential connection for water and wastewater service, providing for the establishment of water and wastewater rates by resolution, providing for a monthly base facility charge, prohibiting free service, providing for no allowance for waiver of monthly base charge, providing for separate connections and exceptions for master meters, requiring backflow prevention devices, prohibiting cross connections, providing for discontinuing utility service for violations, providing for extensions of OUA utility system, providing for connections to fire hydrant for purposes other than fighting fires, providing for sole proprietary fire protection systems, providing for installation of new fire hydrants, providing for procedures for testing meters, providing water shortage policies, providing for establishing capital connection charges, providing for allocation of water and wastewater service capacity, requiring the use of public sewers where available, providing for rules concerning private sewage disposal, providing regulations concerning buildings, sewers, and connections, regulating discharges to public sewers, prohibiting damage to public sewers, establishing powers of authority of the utility inspectors, providing financial fund policies for water system renewal, replacement, and improvement fund, an operating reserve fund, an emergency reserve fund, hydrant fund, a rate stabilization fund, debt service reserve fund, guaranteed revenue charge, providing for procedures for customers without water meter service, prohibiting unauthorized use of the OUA system, providing for write-off of uncollectible accounts, providing for allowable billing adjustments, providing for policies and procedures manual, providing for the severability, and providing an effective date.
Question, could you repeat?
Break time.
Question, the AGRC is struck on mine and you read it.
It is, and it's.
Oh, I
Oh, you
skipped
didn't
over.
read it?
I skipped over.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you read it. I thought I heard it.
The one before that was GRC that I did
Gotcha,
mention.
gotcha. Okay, I'm sorry. Whew. The reason I get these things at 300% and it blows up the whole screen, I have to see now. Okay, comments from the public? Any comments from the public? Joe Public, come in. Comments from the board? Comments from the board being none, I'll entertain a motion to close public hearing.
Motion to close?
Motion, Mr. Nelson. Second, Ms. Trent. Discussion, being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing is closed. Entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2205 as written.
Motion.
Motion, Mr. Nelson, or motion, Mr. Moldenhauer?
Mulligan.
Second, Mr. Nelson. Further discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. They were all that quick. Housekeeping. Anyone want to take a break?
Would you like to take a break?
Hmm?
Would you like to take a break?
I'm going to as soon as I get it started.
Well, we can take a break.
That's all right. Agenda item number 6, meeting minutes of October 18th, 2022. It's the board's pleasure. Accept them, or you want to?
Anybody find anything? No, I didn't see. Motion to accept the minutes? our
to
last
accept.
meeting of July 21st.
Motion to accept by Mr. Nelson.
Second.
Second, Mr. Moldenhauer. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Heck is that? Thought my computer was having a fit. Moving on to agenda item number 7, the consent agenda. Any board member wish to pull or discuss any items? Good.
Motion to accept the consent agenda as is.
Motion by Mr. Nelson to accept.
Second.
Second by Ms. Trent. No discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We're going down to what? We're going all the way down to 20?
Number 20.
Number 20.
Motion to give John a 5-minute break.
I'll turn this over to Mr. Hamel. Agenda item number 20, the preliminary fiscal year 23 budget. And on that note,
Are we on break or you want to?
no.
Say break, but, John, just go real quick.
Don't wait on me.
Okay. Earlier, we spoke about the preliminary budget that was presented in June board meeting. At that meeting, we made some assumptions. One of the assumptions was a rate adjustment of 2% as recommended by the consultant. But in that assumption, the consultant assumption, he had projected an inflation of 4.2%. And we know the average inflation for the fiscal period that we are looking at is running at like 7.5, 7.6%. Which I think the figure for June was 9% and July came down a little to like 8.5%. So we are running in terms of inflation ahead of where the consultant. So for 4.2%, the consultant had suggested a 2% rate adjustment. So with 7%, we think the additional 3.5 increase above the consultant projection, an additional 1.5 rate adjustment on the 2 to bring it to 3.5 is adequate. And that will allow us to propose a positive budget where our total income exceed our total expenses, right? We will, however, have a second look in terms of any expense adjustment that we might need to make between now and next month, and if there's any other suggestions, of course. So having gone through those, in the FY23 preliminary budget in June, we had also included chemical expense increase of like 30%. That's what we had projected. Subsequent purchase order shows that we are increasing chemical expenses, especially the liquid aluminum sulfate is experiencing like 48 to 50% adjustment in that line item only. So therefore, the chemical expenses is beyond what we had. And then we had some other adjustments, assumptions, 1% base salary increase across, $1, base dollar labor adjustment across the board. And finally, employee bonus of 1.5 and no COLA and merit. So those were how we had built the preliminary budget at June.
A question, and that is $1 per hour?
$1 per hour across the board.
That is based upon the statewide minimum wage going up to $15 by, I think it's 2024, something like that. And so what we as staff have elected to try to do, rather than bump up salaries, you know, they have stepped increases as we go through every year. And this is a part of that process to stay up ahead of the minimum mandatory of 15.
Can we have this to reflect that it's $1 per hour
Yes.
instead of $1 on base cost?
It should have been $1 per hour, but that's what it is based upon as far as in the budget is $1 per hour.
What's the matter?
What do you need? Well, we can't do that now.
All right, so if we should look on the assumptions that we are now proposing in the FY '23 budget that we are about to work on. I think I need another sheet of paper. All right, so the assumptions that we're looking to include, if we go back to the rate adjustment, we have already cleared that at 3.5%. The chemicals, we are now at 48% adjustment. The fuel is up from 13% to 30%, which is where we were at $5 per gallon previously, right? So those are the assumptions, and then we have also allowed the increase of the $1 per hour cross to remain, and also the employee bonus of a 1.5 to remain in our proposed budget for 2023. Any questions on those?
Sir, for me.
Okay. As a result of those adjustments, the revenue will move by $399,367, which is a 3.5 adjustment. The revenue will move by that amount, and the expense will also be moving by an additional $196,100, as we showed below. With this adjustment, our debt coverage ratio will also be adjusted, and the transfer at the end in terms of the CIP and the rate stabilization, as shown in the next page, will also be adjusted.
And please keep in mind, as far as the budget expenses, this 196,000 is not the total amount that is going up. It is only a summary. There are other things that have been incorporated already in the budget and taken into account for the other 2% we're talking about. This is in addition to that 2%. Like the $1 an hour does not show up here in this summary, but it is factored into the budget, and it will be an expense.
So with these chemical costs increasing like they are, have we talked to our suppliers to see if this is gonna be a trend that they think is gonna continue? Because from what we were basing figures on, and to see how much it's continuing to increase,
They don't know yet. There's
What-
no way for them to tell.
We have had discussions with them, and the only thing I can surmise from a lot of those discussions is if this inflationary index stays at 8%, then we're good, because that's factored in for that time period. If the inflationary index continues to go up or changes, well, then that's going to be something separate. What we're experiencing is it's not just the chemical cost, it's the added cost that they put onto them for whatever reason. So fuel charges have been huge. So even if the product went up from $100 to $200, when they add the $75 trip charge on top of it, that's to us, it's not just the product cost, it's the delivery and everything. And that's what we're experiencing. So it's never ending. As you have dealt with in the past, recently, products like brass fittings and PVC, all of that's gone through the roof. And so we would only suggest that, yeah, this 196 is over and above what was already programmed in at the 2% increase.
Didn't give you a good answer. They just said, we don't know.
They're using it as a ploy just to raise prices. The next shortage is CO2. Wait till you see soda go up next week.
Are you finished with your presentation?
Well, with those assumptions that we have included in terms of their salaries, in terms of their expenses, is there anything that the board at this time would like to suggest that we include, or any recommendations as we move forward in trying to tabulate and put together?
I do have another question. As far as salaries are concerned, how many positions do we have built into the budget that are vacant?
Our vacant position, we have, I'm talking off the top now, but I think it is 4 positions.
Okay,
And, yeah,
okay.
the one we could list those 4 positions.
And are we looking to fill those positions anytime soon? Or do we have those just factored in,
Well, I
like the
think
assistant executive director
the
position?
executive director position is one, and then we have a customer service position which we intend to fill. There is a position at the water station, given these expansions
Yes.
in the projects. We do have an additional person there as well. So I think those positions are possible
Okay.
looking to be filled.
So are they advertised yet, or they're just there for potential?
But this is the budget, so we haven't actually decided to advertise. We haven't reached a stage of advertisement yet.
That's what I'm,
We
okay,
are now
that's what I'm.
preliminary looking at the budget.
Okay.
What would we like? You know?
So the alternative answer, some of them have not been advertised.
Yes.
Some of them are advertised right now because we do have continual turnover.
Yes.
I think we have 2 positions being either 1 or 2 positions being advertised at the water plant right now. So, and we have 1 being advertised in maintenance. So the answer to your question is, in the budget, all of those positions that he's talking about are mostly vacant, but we do intend to fill them, along with the turnovers of the other ones.
And you will be advertising for the other position, which will be included in, if we staff that position in the '23 budget.
If you're talking about the assistant executive director, we have determined where we can try to move equipment here to make a temporary space. When that's done, then yes, we are going to be advertising that probably within the next month. It'll be open at least a month. So the actual hiring would be 2.5 months away, which would put it well into next fiscal year. So as we end this, I can easily say once again, this is a big document. There's a lot of pieces to it. We would certainly ask again that if anybody wants to sit down either in person or by telephone, we'd be happy to go through it section by section in more detail, showing how we developed the budget process and what went into it, such that when you do your own review, it might make it a little more easier to go through. This is the same budget process that we've done for a lot of years, so some of you may be more familiar with it, but we still make that offer, and would be happy to meet with anybody, again, either by telephone or in person, at your convenience.
John, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have anything delegated for education, do we? Meaning that if there's an opening, but somebody has to advance to a higher academic level, that we can send them to school or pay for in the education that is required?
There is education, there is money allocated for education, certainly overall, but I think in each department. The reason being, some people, new hires, do need to get licensing when they have time in service, like water treatment plant operators. They have to serve a year before they can be licensed. During that time, they can take their written test. For certain staff, myself, let's say, every couple of years, there's a requirement for either attending seminars or taking online courses as continuing education. So that has to happen.
Do we pay for that?
Yes, sir.
We do, okay.
Yes, sir. If there is a change of software, like our accounting software or something of that nature, there may be money allocated to go to either bring somebody in for training purposes or to go out for. So yes, there is money set aside in every budget for training expenses.
Has staff taken advantage of that?
Sure. Yes, sir. Oh, yeah.
Any other discussion or ideas for the budget? I had one, but I think we're good. Everybody that knows me knows what an advocate I am of staff and support staff and workers and how important they are to this utility. And we're lucky to have the people that we have, and we need to take care of them. But being that most of them are already in compliance with the $15 an hour and above, and we're making the effort to go ahead and get them up to that rate, which will generally put them above that rate significantly. I was interested in a COLA adjustment, but I think that $1 will be viewed as a raise because it's $1 we really don't even have to give them.
Well, there are stepped increases, so the state doesn't go from $8 and change to 15 all at once. They do have these annual steps. But again, the way we're certainly approaching it, let's say, for instance, we're $3 over the $8 minimum at the start of this. Well, I would suggest and hope that when we get to 15, we're still $3 over it because everything has to slide up. So the way we're treating this is that as we do, say, this $1 an hour proposed increase, our maximum and minimum scales all go up by $1, and everybody in between that goes up. So it's just a basic shift of $1 an hour for everybody, every position at the OUA. So some would look at that as it's not really a merit increase because everybody's getting the same. Is it a COLA? Well, not really, but at the end of the day, everybody's getting about $2,000 more per year in their pocket.
Directly proportional across the board.
Across the board, everybody gets it. So the downside of not doing a merit, if you have the employees that are excelling, that's what the merit increase is to go. They get something more than a coworker. That's the downside for not doing merit. We're not really satisfying those exceptional employees. So that is a drawback to when you're talking about no merit increase or no COLA. But again, if everybody's getting $1 an hour when you go to buy your groceries or your fuel or whatever, you do have $2,000. Well, before the government gets their hand in it, you do have $2,080 more.
And if our board is conscious of the cost of healthcare now, they will see that part of their benefit package is also supplementing.
There is a projected increase to the monthly minimum that the OUA contributes towards employees' insurance purchases.
So, yeah,
So if there aren't any other questions, then let me just close with this. We will bring this back as a final budget for consideration at the next meeting. Some point before that, we will take into account the rate increase that was approved, a final look at all these cost expenditures, what we decide here today, because we have one other thing to still to discuss. We will incorporate all of those expenses into this final budget and get it out to you.
I would encourage all board members to come on down and speak with Mr. Hamilton and John. I did, and boy, was it worthwhile. The information that Mr. Hamilton puts out is thorough, and when I walked out of there, I knew things that I've been on this board for over 10 years. I saw things that I've never seen before. Thank you, sir, for providing that. There's nothing hidden there. So I'd encourage everybody to come by and. All right, that was for information only.
Yes, sir.
Agenda item number 21, conflict of interest. John?
Deja vu. We had a conflict of interest policy recently before the board. We are pursuing a USDA funding of the Southwest Service Area. When they reviewed our conflict of interest policy, they wanted to get their own 2 cents worth into the policy. So again, you will look that there is an attached resolution after any discussions. We certainly recommend that the board adopt 22-06 to meet the concerns and conditions of the USDA.
For lack of a better term, I call this housekeeping. It's just a housekeeping issue we have to deal with.
For lack of a better term, we're bowing before the throne. We already statutorily, there's a conflict of interest policy by statute for governmental entities. If we weren't dealing with FDA, this entity, we wouldn't be doing this, so I'll hush.
Part of the process.
That's my venting for the moment.
Thank you, sir. I hope you feel better. So,
I didn't see anything in it that,
no, I didn't
Looked
either.
off.
was any
It
problem.
was very boring, actually. Okay, we can, what do we need to accept this?
Need to approve it, yes.
The
I'll
motion,
adopt this
move to confirm.
resolution 2206.
Motion to approve resolution 2206 is written.
Motion by Mr. Nelson,
Second.
Ms. Trent. Discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to agenda item number 22, the proposed OUA employee bonus policy. Thank you, Governor Scott.
Chairman, board members, again, keeping under the idea of housekeeping. We, as the OUA, have for several years been fortunate enough to provide a employee bonus. Typically, it occurs near the end of the year as a Christmas bonus. It was brought to our attention that there is a state statute specifically geared towards governmental agencies giving out bonuses to staff or others, and we were not in compliance with that statute because we did not have a specific bonus policy that we had published and known to all and adhered to. So as staff, we went back through the state statute, looked at the requirements, and you have in front of you what we would suggest is a acceptable policy procedures that the OUA, if they're so inclined to give out bonuses, that we could stick to and be in compliance. I believe Tom has reviewed this and concurs that we're following this. We are within the bounds of the state statute.
So this is the easiest way to make it compliant, and just go ahead and adopt a policy.
What the
Oh,
desire.
well, you could always elect not to give bonuses, but
Well-
if that is the direction of the board, then yes, sir, we just need to adopt this policy.
I'm on board of adopting the policy.
I had a question about wording in Exhibit A. Seventh line, it says full-time employees will be eligible for a maximum of 100% bonus. Does that mean
Part-time.
100% of the bonus that's offered, or?
Yes.
They could double their salary.
No, it has nothing to do with doubling. There's a differentiation between the, you know,
Yeah,
like
full-time and
part-time.
part-time.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay.
So whatever the bonus is that's so directed, they would get all of it.
So we have.
But I like the way you're thinking, though, Harry, doubling their salary.
I'm not crazy about the way you're thinking there, Harry.
So we have no legal issues
Just wondered
with
if it should be clear
the
about
fact that we've done this in the past, and it's not been in alignment with the Florida statutes.
The statute frowns on giving a bonus for work that you're already paying an employee to do.
Correct.
Bonuses are for something over and above.
Mhm.
So this, you need to have a written policy if you're gonna pay a bonus.
Right.
And you need to set the criteria on which that bonus is gonna be paid. Without that, you can't pay the bonus. Legally, you can't pay the bonus. I'm surprised the auditors haven't
That's
come
why
up
I'm
with
asking
this.
this. That's exactly why I'm asking this, because, you know, this should have been caught long before now.
I agree.
And the fact is are there any issues of us paying employees in the past
There has
without
not.
having this?
There's not been.
Could there be?
Well, and yes, could
Yeah,
there
there
be?
could be.
Yeah,
There could be.
challenged on this.
There could be, but typically, there is a provision in the statute to do, if you have not done it, here's the penalty. Where I think the reason why I kind of caught this was there was another governmental agency that had given bonuses of varying degree to certain people. So the analogy was, well, but the state statute says it has to be made for everybody, and there has to be these elements that people need to meet to get that bonus, as opposed to somebody going, this person gets this percentage and this person gets that, and it prevents that from happening
Well, we've always given the bonus across the board.
across the board.
So
So,
it's been fair and consistent in that regard.
yes, we did not selectively
Correct.
give out varying bonuses to different people. So
Okay.
that's where I think the big
That's-
difference between what I'd seen reported publicly versus what we do. Basically, you all said, everybody gets this percentage.
So this, we've not been challenged on this. You saw the article and were proactive. Okay, very good.
You brought it to my attention, and yeah, the statute, we fall under the
Nicely done,
statutes.
John.
Well, yeah, but I should have done it 10 years ago, but.
Well, in the
Well,
past, they've
yeah,
treated
at least
it,
we're
in the,
here, yeah.
in
It-
the
it's
past,
just
it's
one of
been
those-
treated like a gift.
Yes.
It's one of these small things, unless you stumble across it, or audit catches it, we just don't know. So, now we do, and we have the chance to take action henceforth, that this is what we'll be doing.
So the employee bonus review sheet that's attached here, is this in addition to their annual review?
There's a annual performance review that's usually tied to any merit increase, if that's so given, but it'll be very similar in nature.
Okay. I have no further questions.
This statute was only enacted during Governor Scott, right, like 4 or 5 years ago?
2011, I think, when I read it.
It's not like it's
A
20
few
years.
years ago, and then it's
Still.
been, you see the comments from the, I think it's from the governor, that they're trying to tighten that down. I mean, yeah, you don't give gifts, you pay the salary. That's,
And not be selective, I mean, just like what you were saying earlier. Okay.
Okay, we need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve proposed OUA employee bonus policy.
Resolution 2207.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Nelson, second by Mr. Moldenhauer. Further discussion? Being none, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Agenda item 23, the OUA employee pension investment policy.
Ms. Trent can speak to that one.
Mr. Chairman,
It's, yeah, it's been a little while since I've done that one.
Jamie, you want to handle this?
Yeah, that's smooth.
I would recommend that our chairman of the pension board can talk about this, but this is something that we have adopted as the trustees, but the OUA board has ultimate approval. So in your board package, you will find the investment policy. It has already gone through the review of the pension trustees, and it is up for review and consideration and hopefully approval of the OUA board.
Is this an update? Didn't we do this when the old pension board was formed?
Yes, sir. Yes.
This is a
But I think it's
revision of-
it's a time requirement. I think we have to do it every
Couple of years, I
we
think.
have to do this.
So please find attached a copy of the Okeechobee Utility Authority Employees Retirement System Investment Policy. As per Resolution 1603, the Executive Director was authorized to take such actions to implement the OUA retirement plan. An aspect of the plan is to adopt an investment policy by the pension. This policy is then to be reviewed and approved by the OUA Board. The policy establishes the framework for investing the assets of the pension plan. The actual investments will be completed by the investment managers. Overseeing the managers will be an investment performance monitor who will in turn be evaluated by the pension board of trustees. Please review and discuss this policy and provide edits as necessary. Upon completion of the process, the OUA board should accept the document as is or with changes and approve as noted.
So I can tell you that the pension trustees have reviewed this. The pension attorney and administrator have reviewed it. It was accepted at our last pension meeting, and now it's here for review.
So I do have one question. As far as the asset class allocations, we're within, correct? As far as this chart is concerned?
We're within our
Okay.
targets, that's on the second
It's
page.
been a while since I've seen,
And we have to adjust that as the,
Every quarter, they give us a graphic description
Right.
and tableized
yes,
where we are. They have the parameters, high and low. And if we get outside of those parameters, then as a pension board, we authorize an adjustment. We just move funds around between the distributions to bring it back within.
and then one other question I have, because when I sat on that board, you know, our investment management company was actually requesting that we invest in real estate. Am I missing that somewhere on this grid as far as how that's broken out?
That wasn't adopted or approved.
we never
Right.
adopted that.
Okay.
We looked at it, but we never accepted.
Okay, very good.
But, you know, again, we follow their idea that the bigger pensions who have a huge sum of money, they can invest in the REITs, the REITs, because it's hard to get in and even harder to get out.
Yes,
And since we're not that big,
Yes.
we have a lot of money in it, but we don't have hundreds of millions of dollars. So it was, and I'll speak for myself, there was very little interest to get involved in that investment.
okay. Like I said, it's been a while since I've been on the board. I want to make sure none of that changed, and then we have an issue here with policy, so, okay, very good.
Any other questions?
I had a question, page 6, policy, regarding compliance, it was paragraph D, suggested, about continuing education for the Board of Trustees. It said, it is suggested that this education process begin during the board member's first term. I wondered if that language ought to be strengthened to, they need to begin that continuing education.
I'm not sure that it's a state law, but I think that's the way the state law reads, that they suggest that you get that training. So I think that's the reason this policy is probably wrote like that.
Well, is it a suggestion or is it policy? Because there's a difference. Because if it's
Suggestion is the way the
policy,
policy is wrote.
It is not mandatory.
okay, that's why.
But what they don't tell you here is that education process is pretty broad spectrum. So you can attend seminars, which I think we might have a couple pension members going to the next one where they have on-site or training. But you can also, we looked at the idea of trying to get some virtual training for pension members that don't want to travel or don't have the time to travel, because you're giving up 2 or 3 days to go to these conventions, if you will, where they have the seminars and the training.
But it prompted Harry to ask the question. So if it's not clear,
Well, I was just wondering if that terminology should be strengthened to, to
Like John said,
encourage,
it's
board
not
members.
mandatory, and that's kind of why we wrote it like this, that it is suggested. And we try to entice that at, on the pension board meetings. Try to get people to go off and get educated, which there is education that is provided when a new one comes on board. They go through the code of ethics and some things like that with our pension attorney. But the additional training, it is offered to them, and there is some people going later this year, hopefully.
Out of the board, I think there's 3 new members, and several of them are gonna go to, I think it's in Orlando.
Yeah. October, I think.
Okay, October, you got 3 members sitting there, so October, of this year, and it's in Orlando. I went to the one in Tampa. I mean, there's some, you pick up some information out of that, pretty good.
Any other questions?
My experience with the Pension Board of Trustees, OUA's Pension Board of Trustees, is they do a fantastic job. And also, they are fiduciarily responsible like we are, so they're gonna do their homework before they bring it to us. So I'm very comfortable with that board, personally.
Scott's still the attorney? Chairman?
No,
So we need to approve the investment policy.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Motion, Ms. Trent.
Second.
Second, Mr. Nelson. Discussion? Further discussion? Being none, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Kings Bay, agenda item number 24.
every year we get to revisit the Kings Bay development. And just as again, background, in Kings Bay, it's sort of like a low-pressure wastewater system. The wastewater from their septic tank is pumped to our treatment plant located just north of there. It is the only area in our system primarily where we have this type of system that the OUA owns, operates, and maintains contractually. Again, as background, it typically is the responsibility of the homeowner or the homeowners association to take care of these. When that happened, it wasn't done consistently. So many years ago, the idea was that the OUA would take over the operation and maintenance of that pump system. And to do that, we keep track of all the hours, the labor, materials incorporated, and tabulate that. And at the end of the year, we come up with a monthly fixed fee to replenish, if you will, repay the expenses of the previous year. We have done that for this year. We've adjusted out some daily call-outs that would be us. Everything else, the material, the after hours was tabulated. You see it here in this table. Based upon the 172 accounts in Kings Bay, it works out to $9.50 an hour, a month, sorry. $9.57 per month that we add to the Kings Bay bill. So it is the staff's recommendation that the monthly fee for the upcoming year, that we do set it at $9.50 per account per month.
John, we see this every year, and this is the first time I've ever really taken note of how many accounts we have over there. Are we 100% of the,
No, so there's still vacant lots.
there's still vacant lots there? Okay.
Again, back in my memory, something like 225 or 250 is the total number.
I thought there was more than 172. That's why I asked the question. But I never noticed that before, that there was, how many accounts there were. Well, they're getting 3 cents cheaper this year than last year. All right, what's the board's pleasure?
Adopt the new recommendation, the monthly fee to Kings Bay Maintenance Agreement for $9.57.
Motion by Mr. Nelson. Second, Mr. Waldentauer. Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
And let me just add this. We did attempt, if you remember, we used to have a Kings Bay representative here.
Right.
She has since passed away. And so we've reached out to the current homeowners association, but they're not here this morning.
You've given them the invite, so, to participate, absolutely. Agenda item 25, SFWMD AMI Amendment 2.
Board, Chairman, we do have a grant from the Water Management District to the tune of $100,000 for the implementation of this AMI project. The time limit for that expenditure is nearing a term, and they were happy or okay to extend that term for this AMI expense. As a backdrop to that, the AMI project is out for bid right now. We do expect to get the bids in, I believe it's the middle of September. So those bids and the cost of the project will be brought back to the OUA board in October. We do have it partially funded also through an SRF loan grant process. And we will file an additional loan grant application with SRF once we know the total cost of the project. Also out there, I did file an application for an expense to the state when they're going to redistribute some of the vetoed money out of this year's budget. We did put in a request for some funding out of those monies. So hopefully we'll hear something back soon on all of that. We'll certainly get the bids back, and I do not believe they request an additional time, so I think that time will push it after the September board meeting, so it will be October. Then hopefully we'll get to bring all this back to you, and that's when we get the go, no-go for the AMI project. Is everybody aware of what that project is, or should I go over that?
No, I know what it is.
I'm not sure what it is.
She's not sure.
Okay, the AMI project is where we're basically looking to go to a smart meter system so that the individual account, be it residential or non-residential, will be connected to the OUA office here electronically. And some of the real benefits of that AMI system is that we can set things like maximum daily flow rates. So should there be a break at somebody's house or business, and let's say we set that maximum at 1,500 gallons, should it go over 1,500 gallons, two things will happen. We'll get an alert, and the customer will get an alert. We contact the customer and say, oh, no, I'm filling my pool, or then we're good. But if they say, oh, no, that we can then go out and actually turn the meter off should they be back home in Kentucky or Illinois or Canada, wherever they may be. The other benefits that we get is that if the meter should be off and locked, for whatever the reason, we can set it that if any flow goes through it, give us an alert because something's going on. If we have a sale of a business, we always have to have a meter read to be able to close out the previous owner and open it up in a new owner. Well, now we'll be able to do that remotely rather than sending a meter reader out to read the meter and give us a number. So there's a lot of things. We have a customer portal where the customers will be able to log on and see their own water usage, either over time, like a daily or monthly. They can take more ownership, if you will, of their monthly bill.
And a question, so if this is all electronic and the readings are coming to the office, how does that impact staff as far as meter reader?
So we'll always have to have some meter readers because there's going to be improvements to the system, like something breaks, or they might have an account that didn't get paid, so it's got to go off and locked. Or somebody might call in and say, I've got a high read, will you go check the meter, test? So there will always be need for meter readers. Do we need 4 of them? Probably not. So what we would have to do is through time, we would have to transition them into other work assignments that will benefit the OUA. We were talking about like an open clerk position. We've had meter readers go to clerk. They could go to the maintenance department should there be an opening. So we would end up deciding how many do we need and who gets transitioned.
Good answer.
So that's the AMI system. It's, yeah, I think it's going to be, it is going to be an expense. But I think the benefits will be tremendous. Let me back up. This is one of those few projects that doesn't just benefit one person or another. It will benefit the OUA and it will benefit our customers. So, up for tabulation today would be this time extension, amendment number 2 to the South Florida Water Management District grant that's so labeled here.
John, refresh my memory. Didn't you mention at a meeting or two when we were discussing AMI that some of these meter changeouts we're doing now for one purpose or another, our meters you're putting in are compliant with the AMI system, where they don't have to go back in and change them again? Did I dream that, or did you say that?
I probably said something similar to that, so let me make sure I understand what it is. We have a lot of meters that we're changing out right now because of time. They're past their time warranty, or certainly gallonage. But the ones that we're installing right now are compatible with the transponder, the sending unit, that will send the meter data out over the network to us. So we do not have to change out the meter and put in a new meter with the sending unit. We can just add that to these existing meters.
So that will be reflected in the total number in the bid package.
Correct. We have about 9,500 meters, let's say roughly. And I think at last count, over the last 5 years, we have replaced about 5,500 of those meters. And I say, why 5 years? Well, 5 years is well within the time warranty of the meter, as well as the flow rate usually. So we know we could probably go back further, but just for planning purposes, I said 5 years, because there are a 15-year warranty on these things.
So the 5,500, rough number, would not be in the bid for the new AMI.
For a new meter, they will have the sending unit, the transmitter added to it. Yes, sir.
Cool, thank you. All right, we need a motion to accept the extension.
Motion to accept.
Motion by Mr. Nelson.
Harry, I'm
Fight,
waiting on
guys.
you and you-
I'm not used to it.
Was that
He's
a,
verbal.
was that a Terry that identified as the second?
Take advantage of it, Harry. You don't get to vote much.
Still get my name in the minutes.
was
at all.
waiting.
Second by Mr. Moldenhauer. And glad to have you here. Any further discussion? Being none, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Agenda item 26, office relocation. Mr. Hayford.
And we get to the good stuff. So, what we have been looking at, we know that there is improvements needed to this building. We have looked at trying to get grants to bring it back to its 1929 luster. We have not been successful to get those grants. We do have some money in the budget for refurbishment. What we also were concerned with is the floor plan of this building. There is some wasted space. People are pretty tight. So the issue was, should we look at building a new building or buying a used building? In the past month, we have toured 2 places. One on the north side of town across from the Okeechobee Rehabilitation Facility, a former outpatient surgery center that sits vacant. It's about the 1400 block or so, 1500 block of 441 North. We looked at this facility, Mr. Priestman and myself, along with hospital staff, toured the building. It's huge, very big building. You know, the price, the purchase price is in there. I do not know what the sales price that the hospital is going to be looking at, but they are trying to get us a number. But what I can tell you, the good side is there's plenty of parking, beautiful trees in the parking lot, nice exterior, relatively new building. The downside is that the current layout of the office is not conducive to what we need. There's no drive-through, very wide hallways, lots of bathrooms. It's going to, if we were to purchase it, it would require some somewhat extensive remodeling. We have requested from the hospital for them to kind of run it up through their corporate structure to see if what that sales price might be, but we don't know. Like I said, it's a very nice building, big property. It is currently vacant, so if we were to purchase it, we could initiate the remodeling and the repairs fairly quickly. The second building we looked at is the Big Lake / Seacoast Bank Building down on 441 Southeast near 18th Terrace. It is not vacant. They have rented much of the space, probably 2/3 of the space out to a tenant that has a lease that extends through November of 2023. The building is slightly smaller than this one, square footage wise, usable air-conditioned square footage size. The prices could be, since we don't know the price of the surgery center, it's still estimated that the price for this building would be less than the surgery center, and the remodeling necessary is considerably less, because it's already set up as an office building. Already has a drive-through. So it still looks feasible, like a good choice, if the OUA's direction was to leave this building, to leave downtown, and go either north or go further south. If you were to take that one and at least talk about moving south, still we have a considerable number of customers that are in Kings Bay, Treasure Island, Taylor Creek Isles, Buckhead Ridge. Certainly we would be moving closer to those customers, but further away from city center. So, we have the two buildings. If the OUA board was still inclined to move and buy another building, our next step would be to engage someone to do an appraisal for one of the buildings or both of them to establish what we think the market price for that property in the building. So with that, I'll leave it over to my touring partner and/or board question.
Both locations are a definite upgrade from where we are today. This is an old building. I'm afraid that if we decide we're going to remodel this building, we're going to be opening the proverbial can of worms. We're going to find one thing over another, and the cost is going to be outstanding. And I use another cliche. You can put lipstick on a pig, but still a pig. And that's, unfortunately, this building's got the age to it, that you're not going to gain any square footage. There's very little things you can do with load-bearing walls to open this building up to make it conducive for other offices and more usable space. The surgical center, great place. There's the positives John articulated, I'll agree with him. The negative, not knowing the cost.
The
Railroad, and the remodel. Coming from the construction industry, my opinion is that interior would be a total remodel. Everything would have to come out and start over, because they're small exam rooms, very little offices, 2 surgery rooms. There's not even room for a boardroom in there. Hallways are, 12 feet wide?
Pretty
They're
wide.
huge, wasted space. That's the downside to that building, plus not knowing what it costs. We have no clue where they're gonna come back with. It's gotta go through HCA, Brian said, and then the Rollerson Board of Directors, and then they're gonna derive. What we're seeing right now is they paid $900 for it in 18, and it's appraised at 1.2 through property appraisers. So you can say it's gonna be north of that. But everything's speculation on numbers right now until they tell us what they're looking at.
What did we have allocated budget-wise for the current refurbishment here?
600, was it? 300?
I think I put it in here, I think it was 245 or something.
300?
I don't have my book, so.
Yeah.
They kept saying 600. I said, no, I think it says 300.
Yeah, I am. Oh, here we go. This page.
It's gonna be over $300,000.
Well, that's why I'm asking these questions, so,
The only positive, they've got 3 new air conditioning units on it, but
yeah,
big whoop.
yeah.
When you're gonna
Well,
spend another 400,000.
It's a specialized building, so, I mean, that's what you
Is
get.
that what you think it would cost, 400 grand to remodel?
I would say in that general
The
vicinity.
drive-in facility.
Right, yeah, I'm just,
Because you're basically starting a construction site. You're gutting it, leaving the outside walls and building the new to what? You're
I
gonna,
hate moving to a place that's smaller than this place, though. I mean, you know, even if it's more usable space.
go down there.
350,000.
350?
The other building, which John and I went and toured with the maintenance individual down there, is I like to call it the roundabout building, because our staff would be able to look out the window and watch the show all day, so we got to put blinders up where they can't see the show. But it is an administration building. It's set up for administration. The offices are there. They had, at one point in time, 25 employees working in that building. So it's set up. If you walk into the rooms, all the receptacles, computer hookups, everything are at counter height. I mean, the building is ready. They've just taken the counters out. They've got one room probably half the size of this is their file room, and they've got the big rolling files. They said that goes with the building. So our file problem is gone. IT problem's gone. It's got an IT room. I said, executive director office, financial director, those offices are in place. They're nice business offices. Reception area is great. It's got a drive-through. It's got it's separated into an administration building and a bank. There's no tie-through. That'd have to have a door put in there. But customer service would all be done on that one side. They wouldn't be in administration. There'd be no crossover at all. One of the big rooms at the end is already set up that we could make a boardroom out of, or a meeting room, or a conference room. Positive. That, their asking price is $915. It appraises at $461. I spoke with Alex Garcia, the Vice President of Real Estate and Facilities, and I asked him if he was flexible, and he said, we're definitely flexible on the price. I said, how flexible? And he says, I'm not going to give you that answer because I'd be negotiating against myself. I tried to get a number, but he wouldn't give it to me. He did tell me that 461 was not the number, though. As far as remodel cost, there will be remodel cost. There will be addition, but not what we're dealing with at the other. There is a tenant in place till November.
Space, how much space?
It's equivalent to this,
No, that the tenant is using.
the whole building.
Two-thirds.
Well, except for the bank. But they do not have a renewal clause in their contract, so November is it. I asked him about early termination. He said, we do it with other businesses, but when you do something like that, they're gonna want something in return. And if there is a monetary number there, we'll have to pass that on to you. Totally understandable. That
November this year,
23.
next year.
which with transition and moving, that's not a bad timeline, really. It is fit, what, 14 months? It's gonna take, transition's gonna take time. It's not gonna happen overnight. if we considered that. The other item that I talked to Mr. Garcia about is the ATM. Seacoast would love to keep the ATM on the property and lease that park from us. He said they would generally pay $300 to $500 a month just to let us use that end of the parking lot. That'd probably just about cover our liability insurance, I'm sure, of people driving through our parking lot. But that's a caveat right now in the sale. They want to keep it there, we don't want it. So, we could, that's a bargaining
What's the
chip.
problem with leaving it the way that it is?
You mean the ATM machine? Even while we were there for the 45 minutes, there was probably 5 or 6 customers that pulled through there. Now, they understand that there's nobody at the bank, but they were pretty fast driving through there. If we mix in our drive-through customers as well as employees parking, there is a certain liability there with vehicles. The ATM power is from that building, so we would be supplying power. So the intent is, or at least the suggestion is, that if we were to purchase it, that there would be a time limit that ATM could stay there, but then it has to leave the property.
In our conversation, the next closest is up over Kissimmee, over the river. I guess they have another ATM up there, which is less than a mile away, but they sure like the convenience of that one, so.
How much does the ATM generate revenue?
It depends on how many transactions are done at the ATM.
Based on transactions?
Yes, it's based on transaction count.
So what would you say the average transaction would bring?
I don't know the answer to that.
And we wouldn't see any of that money anyway. They would want a flat rental fee, and he said their number is $300 to $500 a month.
That's too cheap.
And the revenue comes from the fact that it's storing ATM transactions. If it's their customer, they don't charge their customers to use their machine.
So that being said, I like the parking, I like the building, there's room for expansion. There used to be a generator out back which somebody stole, I think he said, didn't it, or it broke down and they took the parts and pieced out. Anyway, it's gone.
The OUA bought it.
Oh, did we? Oh, boy. So with that being
Full
gone,
circle.
if we needed to expand, there's room on the property to expand out probably another 40 feet in the length of the building. So there's room for future expansion if needed, but to suit our needs and make a more functional location, that's pretty good. It's just going to depend on the negotiated price. To get to that point, as John said, we need to get a commercial appraisal, and that would be what the board would need to do today, is to approve us to move forward to get that appraisal, then we can come back with some numbers and start negotiating with Mr. Garcia and Seacoast Bank and come up with a firm number. Right now, we're looking at 915 because we don't know where we need to go. There's no barometer set.
It'll certainly be somewhere south of 9.
I'm hoping in the
What's
600 range is what I'm hoping.
Commercial appraisal?
No, we know what the commercial appraisal is. Yeah, it's like 600.
The cost of the appraisal, budgetary price was $3,500.
But I'm hoping the appraisal will come back less than 6.
What's the possibility, I'd like to visit the facility.
Doable after hours because it is operational with the
Current tenant.
The tenant that's in
Department of
there.
Agriculture.
It's just
in there now.
convenient to do it after they close.
Can you arrange it?
Sure, anybody wants to go look at it, either one of them.
Yeah, I'd like to take a look at it.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
Anybody else?
I mean, depending on the date, I'll
Yeah,
bring
I
time
like
along.
All right, just email me your best date, and then we'll see if we can arrange that, because, we just do it after
It's
5 o'clock, so like 5:30.
We met with him at 5 o'clock. So 5 o'clock.
Whatever is convenient.
All right.
Want to go together?
Yeah, we can go
Okay,
together.
is it okay?
Can we go
Can
together?
we go
Yeah.
together? We're not discussing,
I would think it's easily doable, because you're not really, you won't be discussing OUA business, you're just looking.
Touring the facility.
I'll leave our attorney to give us that direction.
just let me know whatever's
I will,
convenient.
okay.
Yeah, I like the layout of this, again, with the bank being separate. That right there encompasses our counter staff and the drive-through. It's all in the one little room that doesn't go into the business office like it is here. People are commingling everywhere. And there's enough room for office manager's office and an assistant office manager's office in that bank. So, you know, you got a business within a business, a public service business and an office business. So I can't say enough of positives about it. The only negative is that tenant.
If y'all will give me your preferred dates, if we get 3 that match up, let's say like next Wednesday or 5 o'clock, then I'll try to arrange that. I will also send you a scan of the floor plan, so you can kind of see how how it's laid out now.
I think I've got it. Oh, you want to do it electronically? I think I've got it here, the one you sent me. But,
Either way, yeah.
okay.
All right, so
Well,
at this point, what do we need to do?
We need the board to give us approval to move forward to get a commercial appraisal and bring that back to the board, and then we'll enter into negotiations with Mr. Garcia, if it's suitable.
If that's the board's direction that we still want to buy a building.
Anybody want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll move it to get a commercial appraisal
Okay.
of the former bank building.
Motion by Harry,
Second.
second by Steve. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Good, thank you. We can start moving in a direction we need to. We can get somebody hired.
It's a ticket.
Public comment. Items from our attorney?
Yes. I'm going to be emailing you evaluation forms for John's performance.
Please be kind.
It's your turn to take the shots that you need to take. I'd love to get them back by the October meeting if we could do it. Sometimes they're a little slow coming in. Other than that, I don't know, John, that there's anything on the
I would only offer if you want me to fill out your evaluation forms, I'll be happy to help you out there. We close on the SE2 property, this week, right?
Yes.
Closing on the SE2.
Yes, I mean,
I think so.
Yes.
We signed
you
yes.
already signed your
We
document.
signed yesterday, and
Okay.
the owners at Wells had signed before, so it's ready. Your bonus now just went from a turkey to a Cornish game hen.
Hamburger would work fine, too.
Anything else, Tom? Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Appreciate being here.
Items from the executive director, John?
There's everything spelled out here. I'd be happy to go over anything. It's all going. It's going well. The Force Main project is moving along. We got to get a contractor to mobilize to start the other 2 projects that have been authorized, Pine Ridge Park and the pump station. We're going to be waiting on the USDA to review the Project 2 documents so we can put it out to bid. Lots going on. We have bids, several bids coming in at the end of the month, 31st. That being on the it says there's 2 gravity sewer extensions, one for the jail on Northwest 5th Street, and then Orange Loop. We get those bids in on August 31st, so those will come back to the board for review. We've got the waiting on quotes for some surveying for the 441 Southeast project. There's lots of little things going on. I do have one thing I want to broach that's not on here. Back up years ago, months ago anyway, when COVID started, there were mandates from the government to give people paid time off for either the isolation or the quarantine if they had COVID. Those federal mandates have dropped by the wayside. But the OUA board, knowing that the COVID was still out there and better to keep sick people away than bring them in, we've kind of abided by that total 80 hours mark. So if they haven't used up their 80 hours, they could. Well, we now know that COVID is the new normal. We're gonna keep having it, and it would be my suggestion to the board that we just go ahead and, maybe at the end of this month, stop the policy of paying for time off for, quarantine for COVID, and they can revert to using their paid sick time and vacation time, if that's okay by the board. But that would be my request, that we just terminate that program at the end of the month and go back to business as usual. Use your sick time, use your vacation time, should you need it.
Would that require board approval, or is just office policy?
If y'all are, I mean, it's just really more or less that, yes, as the executive director, which is, you know, the day-to-day operations is what I gotta do, whether you're sufficient and okay with that direction.
That's pretty much how we've already transitioned anyway, from a private business.
I mean, we don't have too many people using it.
Yeah.
But we just ought to administratively clear that process up and just be done with it. We still try, well, we do follow whatever the flavor of the month coming from the CDC as far as 5 days and 24 hours without a fever and 5 days of mask wearing. Yes, that's the current flavor, I believe, for COVID from CDC. We do adhere to that. We do provide some hand sanitizers, and we have disposable masks around the office. So we still have some preventative measures in place that are paid for and done with by the OUA.
And of course, some type of notification will go out to staff regarding what's going to take place, correct?
You mean about the,
Right.
of the 80 hours?
Yes.
Yes, we'll put a notice out, posted on the bulletin boards at each place of work. So unless there's any reason to say no on that, that's what I'll.
I'm not hearing anybody
Go ahead,
squall.
go ahead, proceed.
So, any of the other projects that you see mentioned here, does anybody want an update or any kind of information?
What's going on with the Bass Pro Shop? I mean,
I would refer all those questions to a select group of BOCC members. I have heard nothing. I can tell you,
I ask a lot of questions for other people, and it's going. You don't see anything.
Last
And
thing
I don't want to be blindsided. Well, it passed, but when is OUA going to put a shovel in the ground? Well, wait, we've been asking all along, there's nothing coming, and being part of the original way back, going back to the other person who put a bid in and wanted to give us $500,000 with no strings attached. It's been, what, 10, 15 years? What gives?
We are continuing the design of the Okeechobee
Right.
Force Main. I have seen the initial facilities plan, if you will, preliminary engineering report, marked it up and sent it back. So they are working on it. Let me at least share two things with you. There is a huge development plan down at Buckhead Ridge, like 1,500 homes or more. That's going to be a significant challenge to serve them with water and wastewater. But the developer has been very limited in the information on that development, so I really don't have much to report.
idea.
But
I've heard rumors that he's willing to pay for a treatment plant.
We said that.
Of course, we've heard that line before, too.
Well, and the treatment plant they're suggesting is one that there's none in the United States. So we can't test and check with other owners, like how well does it work and whatever. So it's like, who wants to be the guinea pig?
Right.
But anyway, we're trying to work with it. Where that impacts us is we have a consumptive use permit to withdraw water from the lake. It's very limited. Our groundwater plant, we have elected not to use because of the hard water that comes out and the complaints we get of the hard water, which means we take a little bit more water out of the lake, which has put us in kind of violation of our consumptive use permit on a daily withdrawal. Well, if you add 1,500 homes, it puts us deeper into the bucket. So we've had initiated contact with the Water Management District to find out how, if possible, we can get more water from the lake, and we can't because of their LOSA rules, not LOSUM, LOSA, the ones that are in effect right now. And so we're trying to work through that to see how we can get more raw water out of the lake. We have the capacity to treat it. We just can't withdraw because of permit limitations. So we're kind of we've started this dance with them to figure out if this 1,500 home development occurs, we can have the treatment capacity to get them water, but I need to work with the district to get raw water out of the lake or somewhere. So we've started the process of looking at groundwater, but it's very, very salty groundwater, which would require additional treatment, capital expense. We are looking at the groundwater plant to try to say, well, what do we need to do as a capital expense there to be able to bring it back online and produce softer water? To be able to answer this silly question that we could get 2 million gallons a day out of the lake and it won't cost us anything capital-wise because we have the treatment capacity to treat it. And that's what we're up against.
Okay, so, part of my ignorance now, okay? We had the meeting, you and I, and John, no, you weren't there. Harry, you were there.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of acronyms being thrown around, a lot of projects that I was not aware of. How can we how can we be educated or be kept up to snuff with what's going on with that regard? That'd be number one. Number two, you're saying that the water's in the lake, but we can't get it based upon consumption use.
Yes.
Okay, so whom do we have, when we went to see Brian Mast way back, the water that he offered for agriculture was just straightly for agriculture. We can't tap that. Remember, he said, if you want more, would you like to have an increase in the water for agriculture? And I said, yes, certainly would like it.
The way the Water Management District, again, I can't speak for them,
I-
but my understanding that I have read out of some of their documents, that in 2008, under their basis of review for consumptive use permits, basically came out and said that domestic and agricultural needs are an incompatible use for Lake Okeechobee. And when you look at the highs and low water levels, there's a minimum threshold where if the lake level drops below this threshold, that it trips some other issues, and that's where this restricted domestic water use is.
Okay.
And so they have also made it such that the Rem Canal, their determination is that it's connected to the lake, so what is applied to the lake is also applied to the Rem Canal. And we have a pump station in the Rem Canal, we have 2 pump stations in the lake, and we're restricted to a very small quantity of water that we can withdraw from the lake. The amount we're asking, 2 million gallons, let's say, that lake would never miss it.
No question.
Never.
Well, that goes back to the
Yeah.
argument that I had in this room here with the higher-ups, the man and the woman. When are we scheduled for maintenance? Because we've never done any maintenance on our side of the lake. 2024. I mean, that's ridiculous. And this is what, 2 years ago we met here?
Yes, sir.
So that's four years total, and we gotta wait another 2 more years? That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
We're working it, we're trying it from multiple levels. We're working with Water Management District staff. I've had some discussions with more senior people at the district, and we'll try to look at it legislatively. I'm just trying to tell you that we will be spending some money in the coming months to try to figure out how we could use our water plants, not using lake water, so we get an idea of what it's gonna cost, and we can go back to them and say, look, we can get 2 million gallons a day here, and no capital expense, or if we can't get lake water, we can only get water out of the ground that has either high calcium or high chlorides, and it's going to require a capital investment at our treatment plants to be able to utilize that water.
They spoke about the reservoirs. Are they gonna go through building those reservoirs?
They've already started building some of them.
They have.
Yes, sir.
I think the only thing that they're doing north of the lake, though, is Paradise Run, isn't it?
Right. There is the planning stages for other, if you will, stormwater treatment areas, big ones, but those are in the planning stages. On the Caloosahatchee River, there is a huge one right at the Henry County, Lee County line that is billions of dollars that is under construction right now.
Who is our main contact from both the Corps and South SMWP, whatever?
Depends on, I mean, Drew Bartlett is the executive director for the South Florida Water Management District, and we happen to have a governing board member that lives in this area, Ben Butler, who's on the governing board. That's at
Ben, I know, right. Okay.
That's they're at the top, if you will. We're dealing with some staff members. We meet every couple months as we try to flush, no pun intended, flush
Right.
out this, how we can make it happen. At the Army Corps,
Was it Hat, what's his name?
there's a couple folks, but I can get you the names. There's
Could you
a
please?
colonel out of, lieutenant colonel out of West Palm. His name escapes me right now. He's the
Was he
top.
the one at the meeting?
He was one of them. And the outgoing
The outgoing was one that was.
district deal was the lady, she now works for the Water Management District.
If you could give me the names, I'd appreciate it. I really would.
But it's just something that's in the works. We have to deal with this. Like I say, there's gonna be some small expenses coming up, engineering studies, you know, to try to ascertain what it's gonna cost us if we don't get the water out of the lake. Administratively, we're trying the approach right now. Don't make the Rim Canal a lake, then I can
Right.
withdraw the water out of the Rim Canal.
Well, the other aspect is, when was the last time the Rim Canal was dredged? You get all the, whatever has flown, I mean, it's been, I haven't seen it in all the years I lived here. That's what I'm getting at, I mean, there's no maintenance. And if they would do the maintenance on this side of the lake over here, I don't think we'd have that problem. And I think the level of the water would be consistently a little bit higher in the safe zone, so to speak.
Well, the lake is the lake, so
Right.
it's, but the maintenance is always been an ongoing issue, not only from the drinking water side, but the recreation side
Well,
for
right.
the people, as well as the environmental side for the fishes and the ducks, you know, waterfowl that use it. Anyway, that's my story. We'll keep you appraised as to how that changes over the next few months. So far, so good. Everything been very receptive. District has been very amenable to meet and talk. So we're hoping for the best.
In addition to the consumptive use issue you're dealing with, are you also approaching the crossing the river with a potable water line to get to this nude?
Well, there is a problem, because one of the permits we need is through the Army Corps of Engineers, and they have told us how this happens. They're taking no new permits until after October 1. So, but we're not ready to file a permit. We were just trying to establish a pre-application meeting, but they won't do that either. Lots going on, and of course, that permit you're talking about would be for the Okatani force main. We have to have that permit. If the Buckhead Ridge development if they ever move forward, we're gonna have to have some new piping for them too, and so we'll have to actually cross the river for that one. The Okatani is only that canal that's right before Scott Driver. When you go, we need the permit there, which is also Army Corps. A lot going on. It's very busy, very, very busy.
I hate to beat my drum, but Felix is still not mobilized out on the vacuum station on 15th Avenue, or 15th Street.
Felix Associates is the contractor selected to build the master pump station. They're under contract, the time clock's ticking. They have not mobilized. Their current mobilization date is somewhere around mid-September.
Okay, well, my point being, there's plenty of work they can be doing. They're under contract now. I don't want to see liquidated damages or extensions to contracts just because they're not out there pouring concrete and forming and surveying and doing site work, waiting on their bid. I just have a feeling we're going to get clobbered at the end, And there's plenty they can be doing.
And the same goes for Pine Ridge Park. They haven't mobilized yet. They've already asked for a 30-day time extension without providing documentation, so that has been denied. That doesn't mean they won't bring it back as the needing time. And they're playing some games. They won't sign the change order because they want time. So the engineer's dealing with that.
Just wanted my opinion that I don't want to see all this stuff on the backside because they didn't mobilize, because there's plenty of stuff they can be doing.
So the means and methods, that's all a function of the contractor. The only thing that we can do, and I've so directed the engineer to do, is on the monthly progress meetings, still harp on them that time is passing and no work is progressing. And that's all we can do.
Wish Jeff wouldn't have left early, because I just want him to let him know that we are watching.
I will pass that on.
Thank you.
What really happened as far as mandatory hookups? I mean, did the commission?
Oh, okay.
Did they actually make a decision that they're going to enforce, or do they just say, well, they should be enforced?
They did not make a decision, but they have directed staff to gather some information for them, of which that means they come to us and give them more information. But it looks like there is movement within county staff
Don't get my computer.
to so they are the
They are
county-
amenable to doing some enforcement then, or?
Yes.
Or they appear to be?
Well, I'm saying that there is work happening. So, what actually comes of it, I don't know, but, I will say the one drawback that came out of that meeting, if you were so inclined to watch it, is,
They all won by acclamation.
that we're 100% saying that every customer we go by with the Okatani Force Main, we will make a provision to connect them. And while that was at least conceptually thought about in the early design, they've now said they want to make sure that we, when we build the force main, provide that point of connection for everybody out there. So we'll see. We're moving forward with that. So noted, as I think it said so. So it is positive. It is positive. There are something is happening.
Just gotta put more pressure on them, that's all, Harry. I mean, it's good. They've had all these years, but anyway, something, what do you call it, we need to take into consideration, I believe, regard to the rate increase, just to remember that consistently, whenever there's an election year, things go crazy. Of course, you've got the middle elections coming up in November. And a year later, you've got the regular elections coming up. And historically, things take a nosedive. So we need to kind of factor that in to the rate increase, as well. As much as I don't like to go high, we just need to be very careful, is what I'm saying. That's all.
Well, when the black SUVs show up at your house, be concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yes.
But that's all I have, sir.
No, thank you. No, the economy
Items from the
is
board.
just crazy.
Being none?
How One Water is working, I mean, I hate
Oh, One Water.
the algae wheel, the One Water, is that thing operative?
As I said earlier, we have reached substantial completion, so we've taken beneficial use. It does operate, but the contractor is currently doing some punch list items. There's 3 small electric motors that have had some kind of problem. They have to address that, and an auger that the shaft broke, and they had to get that fixed. And there's some covers that were not constructed of the appropriate material. They're rusting and whatever. So we got a few issues to work through. It's not complete, but it's nearly complete.
I'm anxious to see if that thing works like.
All of us are.
Any further items come before the board? Being none, I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate y'all, your participation, and see you next month.